The crystal wine glass nearly slipped from my fingers as my father's words cut through the ambient restaurant noise. "Tonight," he announced, raising his glass with a self-satisfied smile that never quite reached his eyes, "we celebrate our real daughter, the successful one." A sudden ringing filled my ears, drowning out the polite laughter around the long oak table. The perfectly cooked steak on my plate transformed into something unpalatable as I watched 20 relatives turn toward my sister Tiffany with admiring smiles. My mother's fingers tightened around her napkin as she pretended to be emotional, while Tiffany basked in their approval with practiced modesty. The overhead lighting suddenly felt too harsh, exposing every micro-expression around the table. The pitying glances, the secondhand embarrassment, the relief that they weren't the target. My name is Lauren. I'm 32 and an entrepreneur. This is the story of how I reclaim not just my family's respect, but my own power. I sat at the far end, the weight of those words pressing against my chest like a physical force. My husband Owen squeezed my knee beneath the table, his calm presence the only thing keeping me anchored to my seat. His tailored suit didn't scream wealth like my father's, but his quiet confidence carried an authority that no one in this room had yet recognized. "Dad," Tiffany said with a practiced laugh, "you don't have to say that." He smirked, swirling his expensive Cabernet. "Oh, I do. The world needs to know the difference between ambition and, well, wasted potential." His eyes slid toward me like daggers. Every gaze followed his, and I could feel the heat rising to my face, not from embarrassment, but from the fury building inside me with nowhere to go. I'd been labeled the disappointment since my small design company failed 3 years ago, the one who married below her worth, as my father had whispered loudly enough for Owen to hear at our wedding. Tiffany leaned forward, pearl earrings catching the light. What is it you do again? Freelancing? A few stifled laughs rippled around the table. My cousin averted his eyes, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on his plate. "Something like that," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my fingers. "Well," she nodded, smug satisfaction radiating from her perfect posture. "We can't all be vice presidents at Dalton and Ross, right?" My father chuckled, tapping her glass with his own. "Exactly. You've made this family proud, Tiffany. You've earned your place." My mother looked at me for a moment, then quickly looked away. That glance, pity mixed with embarrassment, pierced deeper than any words could. Owen leaned in, his voice low, calm, dangerous. "You sure you want to sit through this?" I met his eyes and gave him a faint smile. "Oh, I want to see how far they'll go." The waiter arrived with champagne, and Dad lifted his glass again. "To Tiffany," he declared, "and to the company that made her who she is." Everyone cheered, except Owen, except me. The sound of laughter swirled around us like static, dull and meaningless. I felt the bitterness rising in my chest, memories flashing back, years of being compared, dismissed, replaced. I'd been the daughter who painted her dreams, who failed once and was never forgiven for it. Tiffany had always been the golden child, perfect hair, perfect job, perfect parents' pride. But perfection has a shelf life. Owen's hand tightened around mine under the table. His lips brushed my ear, barely a whisper. Time to tell them we bought their company. For a second I froze. The room blurred. Forks clinked against china. My father laughed at something Tiffany said about corporate success. Then I turned to Owen, meeting his eyes, and found my center again. I cleared my throat softly. "Dad?" He looked at me mid-sip. "Funny thing about Dalton and Ross," I said, my voice steady, almost sweet. "It changed ownership last week." The laughter died instantly. He frowned, lowering his glass. "What are you talking about?" Owen leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "She's saying we bought it. Every share, every asset." The air turned heavy, as if someone had suddenly increased its density. Tiffany blinked, confusion flickering into disbelief across her perfectly made-up face. "You're lying." Owen smiled slightly. "You'll find out Monday morning at your board meeting. We'll be there." He tapped his watch. Your assistant already confirmed it in your calendar after receiving our official notice. My father's glass hit the table with a sharp thud, red wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. You what? I sat back, feeling my pulse slow to a strange, powerful calm. You said you were proud of your real daughter. You should be careful who you call real, Dad. Turns out the one you overlooked just signed your paychecks. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was poetic. Owen reached for his champagne, his tone casual. To family. No one lifted their glass, but for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to. After we left the restaurant, I barely slept, the weight of what we'd done settling over me in waves. The echo of last night's silence still clung to me like smoke as I stood by our kitchen window the next morning. My phone buzzed nonstop, missed calls from my father, unread texts from Tiffany. Owen glanced over his coffee mug, expression unreadable. They'll come, he said quietly. People like that always do. Pride doesn't let them stay quiet. Right on cue, the front gate camera chimed. My father's black SUV rolled up the driveway of our suburban home, followed by Tiffany's sleek white coupe. I wasn't surprised they found our address. My mother had visited once, 2 Christmases ago, when she briefly attempted reconciliation. I could already imagine the storm about to walk through our door. Owen didn't flinch. He simply adjusted his tie with methodical precision, as if this was just another business meeting. When the doorbell rang, once, hard. I took a deep breath before opening it. My father stood there red-faced, clutching a stack of papers. You think this is funny? He barked. You walk into my home, humiliate me in front of everyone, and now you're spreading lies. Lies? I asked, stepping aside. Come in. Let's discuss it calmly. Tiffany brushed past me, her perfume sharp and expensive, like it was designed to take up more space than she did. Dad, don't waste your time. There's no way they bought Dalton and Ross. The board would have told me. Owen leaned against the counter, unbothered. Actually, they did. Check your email. She scoffed, but pulled out her phone anyway. The moment her eyes scanned the screen, the color drained from her face. The subject line read, Ownership Transfer Notice. Dalton and Ross Enterprises. This can't be real, she whispered, her voice cracking. It's very real, Owen said smoothly. The previous chairman was retiring. We offered a buyout he couldn't refuse. He paused, his gaze steady. You'd be surprised how many doors open when you treat people decently. My father turned to me, voice shaking with fury. You planned this behind my back. I met his gaze directly, unflinching. You made sure I had nothing left to lose. Remember? You laughed when my small design startup failed. You said I'd never understand business. I let those memories settle between us. So I learned, quietly, efficiently. He slammed the folder on the counter, papers spilling out. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said, my tone steady. It makes me free. Tiffany rounded on me, tears brimming in her eyes. You couldn't stand that I finally made them proud. So you had to ruin everything. Ruin? I cut her off, feeling something break loose inside me. You spent years treating me like your personal punchline. You and Dad built a wall between us the moment success came knocking for you. You didn't want family, you wanted an audience. Owen stepped forward then, his voice calm but cutting. For what it's worth, Tiffany, we didn't buy the company to ruin you. We bought it to rebuild what your father almost destroyed with arrogance and favoritism. My father's jaw tightened. You don't talk to me like that. Owen didn't raise his voice. You've spent your life confusing fear with respect. That ends now. The room went still, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly audible. I looked at my father, the man who once told me that dreams don't pay bills, that love was weakness, that my worth was tied to how useful I was to him. For the first time, I didn't see power. I saw panic. Dad, I said quietly, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to show you what happens when you underestimate someone who refuses to stay small. He stared at me for a long time, eyes flicking between the contract papers and my face. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. Tiffany followed, but not before whispering, "You'll regret this." When the door slammed shut, the silence felt heavier than before, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was clean. Owen slipped an arm around my waist. "You handled that perfectly." I exhaled slowly, watching their cars disappear down the street. "It's strange," I said, voice trembling just slightly. "How peace doesn't always feel peaceful at first." He smiled. "Give it time. Tomorrow's the board meeting. That's when the real storm begins." The next morning, as we drove to the Dalton and Ross headquarters, I mentally reviewed the facts our investigators had uncovered about the company's declining profits over the past 3 quarters. Owen and I had spent the past year quietly building our investment portfolio, using the profits from his successful tech consultancy and my reborn design firm. We'd approached the retiring chairman discreetly after hearing industry rumors of his departure, offering precisely what he wanted: a clean exit and respect for his legacy. The boardroom buzzed with quiet tension. Glass walls overlooked the city skyline, the morning sun slicing through steel and shadow. The company logo, Dalton and Ross, gleamed on the far wall, but today it no longer belonged to my father or sister. Owen and I walked in together, hand in hand. The board members, all in crisp suits and power dresses, turned toward us with cautious curiosity. Some smiled politely, others avoided eye contact. They'd already received the official notice. Ownership had changed hands. At the end of the long mahogany table sat my father and Tiffany. He looked furious. She looked desperate. Both were clinging to the illusion of control. Owen broke the silence first. "Good morning, everyone. As of last Friday, my wife and I are the majority shareholders of Dalton and Ross. We appreciate your time." Tiffany slammed her pen down. "You can't just waltz in here and act like you own the place." Owen raised an eyebrow. "We don't act like we own it, Tiffany. We actually do." Laughter rippled quietly through the room. A few executives shifted uncomfortably, hiding smiles behind coffee cups and tablets. My father's glare could have burned through stone. He rose to his feet, voice booming. "You don't understand what you've done. This company isn't a game. It's taken me 30 years to build." I looked at him evenly. 30 years of hiring your favorites, promoting your daughter, and running others into the ground. You built an empire on humiliation, Dad. I'm just here to clean up the mess. He took a step forward, his tone low and venomous. You think you can run a corporation? You couldn't even run your own life. Owen stood beside me, his tone steady as a blade. She rebuilt her life from nothing. That's more than you've ever done. Tiffany turned toward the board, voice trembling. You all know me. You know I've kept this company profitable. Are you really going to let some outsider come in and take over everything? The CFO cleared his throat. Actually, Tiffany, with all due respect, the company's profits have dropped for 3 consecutive quarters. Her face went pale. What? I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on the table. I know because I've been watching from the outside for a long time. You spent money on luxury offices, bonuses for your friends, and left your employees underpaid. That ends today. My father clenched his fists. So what now? You'll fire us? I hesitated, then said calmly, No, I'm not you. The room went quiet again. Even Owen looked at me, surprised but proud. I don't need to humiliate you, I continued. You'll stay on as consultants for 6 months, enough time to teach the next generation how not to destroy a company from the inside out. Tiffany's voice broke. You're doing this to hurt me. No, I said softly. I'm doing this so you finally understand what it feels like to be on the other side of someone's arrogance. My father sank slowly back into his chair, silent now. The weight of what he'd lost seemed to crash down all at once. Owen addressed the board again, calm and composed. Effective immediately, there will be a restructuring plan, new priorities, fair pay, employee safety, and ethical management. My wife will lead the transition. Applause filled the room, hesitant at first, then stronger, like everyone had been waiting years for this moment. As I looked around, something inside me settled. Not triumph, but peace. For years, I'd dreamed of proving them wrong, but now that I'd done it, I realized I didn't need their approval. I just needed to finally stop chasing it. When the meeting ended, I walked past my father without a word. He didn't look up. Tiffany sat frozen, staring at her phone, scrolling through messages from coworkers who'd already shifted their loyalty. Owen opened the door for me. "You okay?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Better than I've ever been." We stepped into the sunlight. For once, it didn't feel harsh. It felt earned. As we settled into our new offices over the next 2 weeks, we moved temporarily into the company's executive penthouse while renovating our home. The headlines were everywhere. New leadership at Dalton and Ross promises reform. Female owner brings humanity back to business. Reporters called non-stop. Investors returned. Employees smiled again in the hallways. But success doesn't silence jealousy. It amplifies it. That night, as the city lights blinked beyond our penthouse window, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I heard the voice. "Congratulations, sis," Tiffany said, the words dripping with bitterness. "You really think they love you? The board, the staff, the media?" She paused. "You'll fall just like before. And when you do, I'll be there to remind everyone who the real heir is." I sighed softly. "You're exhausting yourself, Tiffany. Try enjoying peace for once." "You took my life," she hissed. "My position, my respect." "No," I interrupted, calm but firm. "You lost them. All I did was stop pretending you deserve them." She hung up. Owen looked up from his laptop. "Trouble?" "Just old ghosts trying to stay relevant," I murmured, placing my phone face down. But I should have known Tiffany wasn't done. The next morning, my assistant burst into my office, pale-faced. "Ma'am, you need to see this." She handed me a tablet. A video played, a false news clip accusing me of fraud, claiming the buyout was illegal. It was a lie, carefully edited and spread across every major social platform. Tiffany had used her media contacts from her VP days to ensure maximum exposure overnight. Owen entered moments later, jaw tight. She did it. I felt my pulse steady, not from panic, but from resolve. Then we'll handle it the right way. I called my driver immediately and headed to our company's press room. By noon, I called an emergency press conference. Cameras flashed as I walked in, head high, voice calm. False narratives spread fast when truth threatens fragile egos, I began. But facts move louder than rumors. I displayed proof of every transaction, every legal clearance, every signed agreement. The audience watched as the truth unfolded live, documents, timestamps, and even a clip of the former chairman himself saying, "It was her integrity that convinced me to sell." Reporters murmured. Cameras clicked like thunder. And then, right in the back of the crowd, I saw her. Tiffany in sunglasses with a trembling jaw. I didn't flinch. "Family can be complicated," I said, letting the words hang in the air. "But family also teaches us the cost of pride. This company isn't about revenge. It's about rebuilding something honest." The room erupted in applause. Tiffany turned and slipped out before the cameras caught her face. Afterward, when I stepped outside, the air felt lighter. Owen met me on the steps, his smile quiet but full. "You didn't just win," he said. "You transformed." I looked up at the skyline, the same city that once chewed me up and laughed at my failure. "Funny," I whispered. "I used to think success meant beating them. Now I realize it means never becoming them." That evening, as we sat on the balcony, Owen handed me a small velvet box. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a key. "A new building," he said, "for your own company, one that carries your name. You've earned that." My chest tightened, not from pride, but from something softer. "And what about Dalton and Ross?" He smiled. "You saved it. Now let it stand on its own. You don't need their shadow anymore." For a long moment, I looked out over the city, 1,000 windows glowing against the night. Each one reminded me of a lesson learned the hard way. That silence can be power. Kindness can be sharper than revenge, and walking away can be the loudest victory of all. I turned to Owen, my voice steady, full of quiet strength. Let's build something better. Something that never forgets where it came from. He nodded. Together. The city lights flickered below as the wind shifted. Gentle. Clean. Final. A month later, I received a letter from my mother. She'd left my father, finally finding her own courage after watching me find mine. As for Tiffany, she eventually accepted a position at a smaller firm, humbled, but perhaps finally learning. My father, I heard through family, had retired to his lake house, alone with his regrets. Some wounds heal, others just teach us to live differently. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.